Hey everyone. In this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the claim that the personal statement doesn't really matter that much for UCAS applications for maths if you're going for Oxford and Cambridge. I want to split this video into two parts. In the first part, I'm just going to give a quick answer, a quick factual answer to the question, is it really going to affect the outcome of my application? The answer is pretty much no, not really. But then in the second half, I want to explain why, on some deeper level, I think that there's a lot of value in the process of writing a good personal statement, but also just even being in the position where you can write a good personal statement, even if it doesn't directly affect the outcome of the application. So, okay, in terms of like just getting the kind of first part out of the way. So when I was in the summer between year 12 and 13, I was going to all these interviews. So I was going to all these open days, to the sort of Cambridge Open Day. And then I was also spending hours reading on like the student room or on various places online, like how do I maximize my chances of getting an offer? And what do Cambridge, because I was applying for Cambridge, like what do they care about for your application? So the consensus I had, which is pretty much, I think, even to this day, I still think is true, is that the interview matters the most. Then after the interview, probably maybe on the same level of the interview, there's your STEP and I was going to say MAT, but now it's TMUA grades. So that matters quite a lot. And I was actually also told that the references your teachers write matter the most after those two. And then finally, which is to say the least important, it's more just a kind of box ticking. It's your personal statement and your predicted grades. You basically need to make sure you have A stars predicted in maths and further maths. And you want to have gotten a 9 in maths GCSE. And then your personal statement just needs to, just say that why you like maths and whatever, right? So yeah, I'd say that. So this situation, by the way, it's for Oxford and Cambridge. There are two caveats, and there are two caveats which either you've already heard about or are kind of obvious. So the first caveat is if you don't get an offer at Oxford or Cambridge. Some places like Imperial or Warwick, they still use the TMUA, that's true. But there are many universities where you don't even have any admissions tests or interviews. And in that case, your personal statement is like a significant part of your application. And it is, if you have a great personal statement, then you probably will get an offer, all other things being equal. So I would say that unless you're a mega genius for whom it's absolutely guaranteed you're going to get an offer at Oxford or Cambridge, I would say that you want to have at least one or two of your 5 choices being somewhere with slightly lower entry conditions, just as an insurance. And then in that case, you need to have written a good personal statement. And then the second case is that it's the winter pool in Cambridge, or I think it's the sort of second and third college interviews at Oxford. So I've included a picture of a pool in Cambridge in the winter. This is the Jesus Lido. This is not the sense in which I mean the winter pool. So you can Google this if you're interested, or maybe you already know what it is. But basically the winter pool is if you, say you apply to College X at Cambridge for maths, and your interview if it goes amazingly, then you'll get an offer directly from there. You'll get a letter saying, okay, if you get the STEP grades, then you can come here in October. Or you get rejected outright, in which case, you won't be going to Cambridge. Or there's this kind of middle ground where all the colleges, they put together the people who they think are good enough for Cambridge, but they don't quite have enough space at their college. They put all them into this big pool, and then in early January, like all the directors of studies, they kind of go around and they kind of fish people out of the pool. The colleges where they have more space, or the fewer people have applied that year, they'll kind of fish them out of the pool. And so indeed, in my case, like I was a beneficiary or perhaps victim, depending on how you want to look at it, of the winter pool. So I applied to Trinity, which is like a very oversubscribed college. And I was fished out of the pool by Girton, which is one of the least subscribed colleges because it's quite far from the centre of town. So in my case, I'm a little bit biased because I think that in that case, like actually having a really strong personal statement helped because that along with your interview notes, like that also was what my director of studies saw in my file. So those are the two kind of caveats. And so I'd say overall, if you're just thinking about getting the offer and kind of that's it, then in terms of how much of an effect it will have on the outcome, probably not a lot having a great personal statement. You should still make sure that it's sort of passable. Okay, but having said that, I think that there's a trap that you can fall under, which is to think that, okay, only the interview and the TMUA and STEP matter. So all I need to do is just a bunch of past papers for the TMUA, and then I need to get some mock interviews, and then that's the end of it. I'm going to get an offer. I think the point that misses, though, is that from the moment you decide to apply for Oxbridge Maths up until when you send off your application, the vast majority of your efforts actually spent on wider reading, kind of problem solving, doing Olympiads, and getting a sense of the bits of maths that you're interested in. And the value of that is, I think, so much more than just the like how much do Cambridge themselves care. Because firstly, I find that being a better problem solver and having been exposed to more material, it does just make the interview and STEP and so on easier. Like in my case, I had I remember in my Step 3 exam, there was a number theory question that was on Fermat's method of infinite descent. And you can look this up if you're interested in what that is. And they were trying to present it as if it was a new concept, but I had already seen it in the number theory book, or I had done like an Olympiad problem that was very similar to that before. So that made the whole of that question much easier. But I think also starting out your degree, having already delved quite deeply into like one or two areas of maths, it also makes the first year more comfortable as well. So a good example of this is like I had my supervision partner in first year. He had read cover to cover before coming to Cambridge this textbook on analysis. Right, so he'd done all the problems. He spent ages thinking about the ideas. And for most of our courses, we were like a similar ability. But for that one course, he was just way better than me at it. Like he had done even the hardest questions on the sheet because he'd already seen all the material before. And I think just out of the 8 courses, so in Cambridge first year, you do 8 courses. You know, knowing the contents of one course, that's already a huge advantage. And so I think, for those reasons, I'd say that doing the work towards getting a good personal statement is inherently valuable. And indeed, I found that a lot of the successful applicants that I tutored, the reason why they might not have initially had a great personal statement wasn't because they weren't good at maths or because they didn't have enough to write about or they hadn't done any reading. It was just purely the thing of like that they hadn't done the English GCSE exercise of actually just writing out the prose, of just making sure that the sentences sound good and all of that kind of stuff. Like that was the only reason why. And indeed, like with just one session of just talking about what they should include, we were able to draft very good personal statements by the end. And what I want to do now is I want to talk about what's the one trait that I think all successful personal statements I've read have in common. And I'm going to illustrate this with my own, what I was doing the kind of year leading up to writing a personal statement. So I think the key basically is, so you might have already heard that you don't want to just, so they don't care about like random stuff like D of E or playing the clarinet or whatever. That's true. It's more, I'm sure you already know that it's about kind of super curriculars that you want to include. But they also don't really care about, say, reading popular maths books like, Maths and the Simpsons or like Simon Singh's Fermat's Last Theorem. I mean, those are great books. They're very interesting and I've read them myself. But they don't actually necessarily make you better at problem solving. They don't actually necessarily make you a better mathematician. So I think the key is that what you want is to showcase a narrative of you like delving deeper into one area of maths and solving like a lot of hard problems that are relevant to that one area. They want essentially evidence of that. And so let me give you in my own case. So firstly, I started off by reading books that were a bit more general and were a bit more like popular maths books. So I read, Tim Gower's A Very Short Introduction to Maths. And this was like, it was kind of popular book, but also there were some cool ideas that I learned. So I learned about like, to be honest, the only thing I can really remember is like kind of distances in higher dimensions. So just as there's a Euclidean distance in 3 dimensions, like how would you do that for like 5 dimensions or like and it's like he talked a bit about like fractals and like and that kind of thing as well. And so so that was like a good thing to start out with. But then I realized I was interested in number theory and combinatorics. So I read this book on the twin prime conjecture by Vicky Neal. It's called Closing the Gap. And so that was like kind of half of it was just talking about the process of like how they make progress on solving maths problems like the twin prime conjecture. And the other half of the book was just giving a bit of basic number theory about like prime numbers and so on. And then at that point I was like, okay, so I want to explore this further. So what I did is I got the UKMT, they've got these excellent Olympiad preparation books. So you can get kind of general ones that have solutions to BMO problems, but also they have specific subject books as well. So the 2 books that were excellent in my opinion, the first was the number theory book. So this included things like modular arithmetic and Fermat's little theorem and all of that kind of stuff. Then there was also another book on combinatorics as well. So the combinatorics book had things like pigeonhole principle, recurrence relation, and double counting and that kind of thing. And I think if I could go back to sixth form, and if I could only do one thing in order to prepare me for applying for Cambridge Maths, it would have been reading these two books, because the amount of, I think, by just kind of learning the concepts, but also doing all the problems, just the amount that matured me as a mathematician, it's impossible to overstate. I think it was so useful to do. And I think also in terms of my kind of narrative, in terms of the journey, I think having read these two books, I then kind of, not only did I say in the personal statement, oh, I read them and they were interesting and whatever, but I kind of acted on them, and I had done more things kind of related to the stuff I learned. So for example, here there's a picture of a much younger version of me giving a talk to my school's math society on integer partitions. So I gave a bunch of talks. Then I also, for my gold DOV, I kind of recorded these sort of short YouTube videos for my school's maths department, where I was just talking about concepts from number theory and combinatorics. So I think I gave a proof of Lagrange's four-square theorem, and then I also talked about stuff like double counting and a lot of modular arithmetic and proving the Fermat-Euler theorem and that kind of thing. So yeah, you can see here that basically what was so that was one big paragraph of my personal statement was basically just me talking about why I was interested in combinatorics and number theory. And I think indeed, yeah, that was probably the single highest ROI thing I did in sixth form in order to prepare me. Okay, so there are a number of other things I could say about personal statements and what to include and how to prepare for an application and so on. But that's all I have time for today. I hope I was able to convince you that there is some merit in kind of striving towards having a good personal statement at some point. You're not expected to sort of write Shakespeare, but I definitely think that if you've kind of developed an interest in maths, then it's not super difficult. If you've gone about it the right way, it shouldn't be super difficult to then have a good personal statement at the end of it. So yeah, if you're interested in tutoring, then please check out the rest of my website, and I'd be happy to have a chat just to discuss what your goals are, what you're working towards. But otherwise, I hope you found this useful. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.